Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Terp Family Fundamentals webinar series. My name is Danielle Walker, and I'm the program coordinator in the Office of Parent and Family Affairs. For those that are new, this webinar series is intended to help you become informed consultants on campus resources. Many students are experiencing challenges as they navigate the world today, and you as parents and family members are feeling it too. Today, we're joined by two staff psychologists in our University Counseling Center, Dr. Pepper Phillips and Dr. David Peterson. And they will address the various types of challenges that students and even you as parents and supporters are experiencing as a result of the pandemic. Our presenters will also discuss the importance of creating space for and addressing the challenges and share strategies to navigate these challenges. Please feel free to submit questions via the Q&A feature throughout the presentation, and we will do our best to answer those by the end of the webinar. Also, this webinar is being recorded and will be available on our Terp Family YouTube channel shortly after the session. With that, I'll hand off the presentation. Welcome.
Well, welcome everyone. I'm David Peterson. I'm a staff psychologist at the University of Maryland Counseling Center. And along with my co-host, Dr. Phillips, we're just very pleased to be able to speak with you today. We do a lot of work with the caregivers of students at Maryland. We take phone calls and are always happy to consult with parents and other caregivers. So we come with that experience, as well as, of course, working and counseling with many students. And both of us ourselves are also have students in college, so we're especially pleased to be meeting with you today. So let me proceed. We'd like to just get a sense of who we're meeting with today, so we're going to start with a poll question, and we have two questions for you to respond to. And we'll just we'll give you a few seconds to do that. So that's impressive, everyone. Today, it looks like this is not the first student in your family to go to college. So that gives us a sense and gives you a sense as to who you're with today. I want to move on then to the next question, also to find out a little bit more about you. If you take a second to respond to these items. And that looks pretty solid as well. So all of our participants today are the caregivers of a first-year student. Okay. And then finally, we'll take a look at this and to get a sense as to where your student is living this semester. So we're seeing that the majority are on campus, and then a portion are at home or with some other family member. Okay. And that looks pretty, nothing in between. So that looks pretty clear. So the majority on campus with some of you having students at home. Okay, thank you for that. So let's go on to the next slide then. We'll end that poll. So yeah, so what's important about our topic today? And I think we all kind of know this. We've been living and working in this very unusual time for more than 6 months now, and there's a lot of talk about that. But a lot of these points here are probably pretty familiar, that life is pretty uncertain, and that not only do we maintain our responsibility to our students, But we also have our own difficulties with isolation, working from home or not, and quite a difficult national environment now with the awareness of racial and social divisions, and of course the very pending national presidential election. So there's a lot going on, and we have the kind of dual responsibility to care for our students, but also take care of ourselves. And so we hope that today you'll come away feeling, one, that you're not alone in this balancing act, but that you'll come away with some ideas and strategies for not only helping yourselves, but also your students. So these are some of the things that we're hearing that may ring true for you as well in terms of what concerns are real salient for you right now. Health risks, the distance from your students during this really crazy time. It's hard enough anyway to have a student away from home at college, but in this particular environment, it's particularly distressing. And there may be many more on this list besides what's on this list that come to mind for you. And what are we hearing from students, and what are you hearing as well? Well, you obviously, academics are challenged anyway, especially for first year students, but the isolation and loneliness that comes with the pandemic have an impact in academics and many other areas of their lives away from home as well. So again, we could probably triple this list, but these are the things that most commonly come up in our work with students. So we'll move to what we call a reflection. I'm just going to have you think about some things, but as you're thinking about how can I be most helpful to my student, it's helpful to think about your own experience and what overlaps there are between your experience as well as those of your student. So we'll go to this reflection. I want you to just take a very few seconds here to imagine a typical day for you about 1 year ago. If you can think back then. So, last fall, and look at some of these items to help you kind of remember way back in pre-pandemic times what it was like for you. Your work day, your social life. What did you do in your free time? Okay, so just connect with that memory from a year ago. And now I want to bring you up to today, a year later, and compare in your mind the differences. What's your work day like today, or your day, whether you're working now or not? How do you interact with others? What's stressful today? And you may be thinking about in that last item, maybe there are ways that life feels maybe less difficult than it did last fall, maybe even better, possibly. Okay, so now we're going to reflect, and I just wanted to pause with this, thinking about, if you're wondering, how come I'm thinking about myself here? It's important to think about yourself. It helps you do a better job of being ready and available for your student. And now I want you to think about, as best as you can, last fall, what a typical day for your student was like in school, in their social lives. What were their main sources of stress? And what brought good feelings for them? Their sense of pleasure and joy, energy and excitement. Okay. And compare that to what you're hearing now or seeing now with your student when you're in touch with them. What's a typical day feel like for them? How are they managing all of the changes that have come with this so-called new normal, how able are they to seek help with something that was so unexpected not that long ago, certainly not 6 months ago? And what's interaction with others like for them? How are they making that happen? Because we think that is important still. And how are they managing self-care? And can they think about, and can you help them think about focusing on those things that are within their control, those day-to-day, most immediate things? Because it's so typical to wish we could control the bigger things, like the virus, number one. Okay. And Pepper, I'll sort of turn it over to you at this point.
So we just then want to get a sense of, again, I'm Pepper Phillips, or some of my students call me Dr. Pepper, some call me Pepper, some call me Dr. Phillips. So I'm glad to have a chance to meet with you all as you want to kind of get a better sense of how to kind of respond to be caretaking for your students. So we want to have a poll question of kind of get a sense of what was that like? Did it help you empathize with your students' experience? Did it make you feel worse? Was it kind of difficult? So if you could just respond. Okay, so for many of you, it did help you empathize with your students' experience. For some of you, it made you feel a bit more worse, and in some ways it was a bit kind of difficult to do. What we did want to make sure we did in this program is to make sure first you were attuned that you as a caregiver have your own process and how your life is very different right now. And so because of that, there's a lot of really figuring out how to take care of yourselves. And that is just one big take home we wanted to first kind of remind you of. So when we talk about how to be helpful to your students, to make sure you're thinking about how to be helpful to yourself as well. And I know, when you think about it and reflect, it in some ways will make you feel worse, and because it's a tough process. So thinking then about how tough it is for you, perhaps, as well as your student, then how can we be helpful then? So on the next slide, I don't know, I know, David, you've got the PowerPoint, so if you could forward to the next slide. Some of the reactions that we find with this process and how things are so different is, with students, we can find increased anxiety or agitation. There can be a big change in eating. For some of our students, what we see is they can be eating more or less than usual. The sleeping habits period with college students is really not so great. And then in the midst of the pandemic, we really find a lot of times students struggling even more. And in general, we find people really struggling with their sleep. So decreased motivation can happen, some difficulties concentrating. There can be, if anyone has some kind of mental health issues or some health issues, there can be, a little bit of an increase in those areas, as well as if there's any alcohol, tobacco, or substance use, there can be a bit of an increase. Now, again, that can be for some students, and these are things to look for. That can be for ourselves. They're good things to look for. So, and it's helpful to know who is in our audience. So I am aware that for the majority of you, this is the first time your student has gone to college. So there's a whole overlay of how to then be thinking of them more separate and on their own. And that can be a whole other level of challenge for a caregiver. But what are ways we can help our students? And I'm just real mindful, most of you, you're talking first year students. So one of the things we do find is a lot of times our students can be so absorbed in social media, it can be overwhelming. And we really try and encourage students to really watch how much they take in, and that can be tough to limit. So if there's ways that you can encourage your student to kind of monitor that or put some caps around that, that can be helpful. You know, the things that you all probably do a lot already that seem just kind of like a given, to kind of remind them as much as they can to eat well-balanced meals, to stay hydrated, exercise. Now, the tough thing is trying to help them be creative to how to get that exercise. You know, whatever way they've done it in the past, what are ways that we can help them do it for now? Whether it's walking, we do have our Epley Center where we have, you know, different programs they can participate in virtually. And I think they're talking about doing some in-person working out, good sleep hygiene, watching the alcohol or substance use. And we've got lots of different programs on meditation, but any ways that they can work on any deep breathing exercises or progressive muscle relaxations or meditation. So our next slide, just trying to be mindful of the time, you know, working to help them make sure they take time for self-care. Sometimes students, particularly freshmen, can get so or fresh persons can get so overwhelmed and overcommitted they don't take the time to kind of do self-care. Helping them figure out how to make connections, how to get support if they're in this first time college students. What are ways to build connections? You know, some students are finding that very easily. Other students may have some challenges, and how to do that in a more virtual environment or being mindful of social distancing. We have a lot of student clubs and community or faith-based organizations, encouraging them to reach out to those different groups. If your student is concerned about whether they might have virus symptoms, we wanted to make sure they're aware of the UMD Health Center Heal line, that they can call and leave a message, and they can be, if there's someone that doesn't immediately answer, they can be called back and, you know, present what symptoms they're having and kind of get support what might be next best steps. And of course, as David and I are psychologists, we wanted to mention our counseling center that has mental health services and referral assistance. So on our next slide, you know, the tough thing is to first, and I think you all are by being here, you're mindful of what your student might be going through, to make sure you take the time to acknowledge and hear and listen to what they're feeling, because some of us can get pulled into problem solving, you know, and by the fact that you have come to this workshop, you know, to make sure you're available. I have a sense that you all, by being here, that's something that you do. Encouraging them to seek help. You know, sometimes students are reluctant to do so, and sometimes there are certain people they may be more comfortable reaching out to than others. You know, like sometimes a student may be more comfortable reaching out to a physician versus, you know, a psychologist or a religious leader they might be more comfortable reaching out to, or a sibling, to think about who they might more likely reach out to and encouraging them to do so. You know, you may find that you're going to be a little bit more active than you usually would be. As caregivers, and certainly for first-time students, you may find yourself doing a little bit more than you would have in the past. And we always encourage caregivers, if your student can do it for themselves, that's important, and to let them. But if you feel like they can't, find the resource, make the call, that's okay, to up your level of jumping in a little bit. Having realistic expectations, encouraging them to be realistic. There may be a little bit of drop in their academic performance. It may be a little bit bigger transition than they expected. To kind of help them realize, you know, there are reasons it's a bit of a tough transition. But finally, accepting your own limitations as a caregiver, where there's so much going on and there are many ways we can be helpful, but kind of realizing that there are just some things we don't have control over. And our next slide is, you know, just kind of trying to kind of let go of what we can't control for now, but what can we control? So, surrendering to what is. So our quick facts we wanted to go over, we do have free and confidential consultation and psychological services. Those services are available via Zoom. Only right now we find students are really they like the virtual services. So the non-emergency number, so if you have a real concern about your student and you'd like to talk to one of us, this is a number you can call, the 314-7651. And you're seeing things you're worried about or you're not sure how to be helpful, you can give us a call. And these are our hours Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30. And our just a little bit more information on how we work with students. When they call, they'll have what's called an intake appointment, where we meet with them virtually and we kind of get a sense of what's going on for them and then come up with a plan of what might be next best steps that could be helpful. We also have, we do have immediate mental health emergency options for students. And if they really, really would need an in-person appointment, that can be arranged. We also have drop-in consultation for students that are in isolation or quarantine students. So and again, that's a virtual kind of service, but we have hours that are just for our students in isolation and quarantine if they need to reach out to talk to someone. And then our next slide, just to give you a sense of more of the services, there's an anxiety toolbox and getting unstuck workshops. There's skill-based workshops. We have a lot of virtual workshops that students can participate in, as well as therapy groups, brief individual counseling. And, sometimes students may prefer, or caregivers may prefer, their students to seek campus services off campus. And then we're more than happy to help with those referrals. So those are like some of our key services. These are some helpful websites, both of the UMD COVID-19 resource page, a lot of resources, the Counseling Center resource page, as well as the Parent and Family Affairs resource page. Lots of good information there. And our final resource slide, the next one is, a lot of websites that have, some information about building resilience, coping with social quarantining or social distance and quarantining, as well as some sleep hygiene tips. There's just a lot in there, and those will be available to you in a PDF. So we want to now allow time for some questions. And I see we do have, that's just a comment.
Yes.
So are there questions that folks have? I know we tried to pack a lot of information, but there are things we may not have gotten to.
Yes, there was one question about how students can make connections. And so I answered that in the Q&A, but I did want to share for everyone else. Our Office of Student Affairs, Vice President for Student Affairs, the office sends out a weekly email to students that includes a lot of programs and resources, and also video recorded in every email. And so every undergraduate student receives this every week. It comes out on Wednesdays. And like I said, they include a lot of programs and resources. Like this week is the Mental Health Awareness Week. And so any programs that are being offered across the division, whether it be virtual, in person, or a combination, that's included in that email. And then also students can utilize Terp link, TERP LINK. That also includes a lot of information about what student organizations are doing and other events around campus. A few weeks ago, we had the First Look Fair, which is where students can learn about what student organizations are on campus, clubs and organizations. And then there's also the Student Org Resource Center that's also available. And Pepper had mentioned earlier about the Epley Recreation Center. I know they're starting to do some in-person small group classes. And so what we were finding is that our male identifying students were more so interested in the weightlifting, but our female identifying students were more interested in the group classes. And so Epley Recreation Center is starting to do those. So we're doing a lot of different types of events to hopefully help students create those connections. So hopefully your student is utilizing those resources that we are sharing with them. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to send those through the chat or the Q&A feature. That was the only question that came throughout the presentation. Is there anything additional from you, Pepper or David, that you would like to share, since we do have some time still together?
Well, I would just add a little bit to what you just provided, Danielle, in that similarly to what Pepper said about our online counseling center services, students seem to transition better to this to services online than even some of the service providers. So, but we don't want them to assume that there aren't a lot of things still available even in the online format. And so that's why there's so much kind of promotional material going out that, yeah, we're kind of we're in this sort of semi-lockdown environment, but a lot of student organizations and clubs are still holding meetings virtually. And it does seem that the students that I work with who find them are really, in some ways, almost more comfortable first time attending some of these virtual meetings than they might be in person, especially again in their first year at college. So you can encourage them to look and not assume that things are not operating just because of the pandemic, but in fact, they've transitioned very, very successfully to an online format. And there's a lot to be had out there in the way of connecting with other students.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing is, I just want to say to you all as caregivers, I've been so impressed with how students and are being able to take advantage of a lot of the virtual opportunities and the programming that we have. So it's really nice to see it happening. And at the same time, for students when they are struggling, and they could be struggling whether it's a pandemic or not, to reach out and connect, that sometimes it can take a while for them to transition to how to find their niche, how to find their folks they connect with. So a lot of things that we would do is, well, I'll say in my caregiver mode, it's helping them work to find who are their friends they're going to connect with, what are their clubs, and that can take a while, whether it's pandemic or not. So really trying to help them find their place of support, find their activities that make sense for them, can make the world of difference. And there are so many sometimes opportunities, and it's trying to help your student not get overwhelmed and figure out what makes sense for them. So again, it's the overlay of the transition to college as well as the pandemic. But I just want to say again, for you all, I can imagine this is tough anytime you have a student at college, but in the midst of a pandemic can be anxiety provoking. And so, my heart goes out to you, and I want to make sure you know that we are available for you as parents to kind of any way you have questions, we want to be there to answer, what ways that we can envision how you could be helpful, or resources that might be helpful to your student.
One question that we had come in is about time management and where students can get help with time management. I do want to share that the Student Success Center has resources on time management. Again, that's the Student Success Center, but also the Counseling Center has resources for time management. Pepper or David, do you want to share about the resources that the Counseling Center has regarding time management?
Yeah, one of our, we have so many workshops going on that are virtual, and we have one that really helps with, trying to how to manage the time and set up for success. And, again, so when students are learning to kind of balance, how to take classes, how to connect with others, time management, that's a good question, can be a challenge. So we have workshops for that. as well as, I think what Danielle mentioned can be a really good resource. And, that's why if students are even having trouble with time management, even like just one chance to talk with one of us to kind of come up with a plan can be very helpful. So workshops or one-on-ones with some counselors, but that is one of those first time things that students really struggle with, how to manage academics and trying to connect with others.
If you take a look at our website and you look for the wellness workshops, there's one workshop every day, Monday through Thursday at 4 o'clock. And there's a series called Academic Skills, I think, Pepper. And you'll find several things related to better organization. There's one on procrastination, which is a really common student concern related to academics. The nice thing about these workshops is there's no registration required. They just show up at the time of the workshop that they want to go to. There's a Zoom link on the website that they use, and there's a whole series. So there's several on academics, there's a few on coping skills, and there's one on relationship skills. And so it's comfortable for a lot of students who really maybe don't think they need to go to the counseling center. They don't want to talk to someone, but the workshop topics hit many of the things that we might go over in a one-on-one session for students. So that we've set those up to be really easy to access. So again, if you look at wellness workshops on the Counseling Center website, and then you can pass that on to your student.
And I did want to say it's Tuesday from 4 to 5, and that is the first Tuesday of each month is the time management workshop, and that is again Tuesday from 4 to 5. And on our website there's just a Zoom registration link right there that the students go to. But again, for some students that are studying or struggling with the time management, I would encourage them to look at all of the workshop series on the academic skills, because a lot of times that links to the procrastination and the focus, because the concentration piece is something that we do see students struggling with. So that's why we particularly wanted to do something around the academic piece.
Great, thank you both. It looks like we've answered the questions that have come through. If you take time to look at the chat feature, you'll see that I included the link for the Counseling Center workshops. So visit the chat to get that link. I want to thank you for taking the time to join us this afternoon. As we bring this webinar to a close, I want to remind everyone that a recording of this webinar will be available on the Terp Family YouTube channel. Also, contact information is on the slide here that you see. So if you have any questions later on, please feel free to reach out to either office and we'll be happy to assist you. Also, I'd appreciate your feedback on this session. So I've placed a link in the chat feature as well for a survey. And so if you would please do that, we would really appreciate that. Please let us know how we did, how we can improve on future webinars, and any other topics you'd be interested in learning about. I thoroughly enjoy connecting with our campus partners across campus. And so these webinars are a way for me to do that. So if you view our Terp Family YouTube channel and don't see a webinar that is of interest to you, or you're wanting to learn something more, please let me know. You can do that at terpfamily@umd.edu or through the survey. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye-bye.